Like I've been sitting all day.
You want to stand for a bit? We can stand.
No, it's okay.
First of all...
Actually, I'm very comfortable at the podium. I think
Okay.
I'm going to have you sit here. And
Sure. No problem.
I'm get my tutorial today anyway.
Can I ask you
Yes.
a weird first question of you?
What?
Love the sweater. Are you a big
I'm cold.
Captain America fan, or is it borrowed from some
Bloody country is cold. I'm from California. We have blood like Kool-Aid. No, I just got this, but actually about 30-some years ago I tried to get the rights to this when Christopher Reeve was playing Superman, and
Right.
nobody was interested in doing superheroes then. So we didn't do it. Also tried to get John Carter of Mars back in 1980. No one was interested in doing 100-year-old superhero, first science fiction heroes. So anyway, and now suddenly here they are, and I'm too damn old to do it. But I am Tron, and don't forget.
Well,
Anyway, yeah, go on. You have something to say? Please.
not if you don't want me to.
No. I like this up here. This is good.
The lasting legacy of Tron, obviously with the release of Legacy just a couple of years back, what is it about the franchise that inspires such fandom and passion in people out there? What do you think that is?
Oh my God, there's so many reasons. I think Tron, in some strange way, kind of predicted the age that we're living in right now, in its own naive little story. Predicted the age of information, which we are in. And at the time in the 1980s, we were yet to get there as average people. You know, we communicate with these things. You know, I had a little senior moment about half an hour ago. It was in the pouch of this sweatshirt, and I'm going, where the hell's my cell phone? And it was right there. Anyway, and you know, I lived a life when we didn't have these things, didn't need these things, and we got along perfectly fine without them. Now we have them, and they're panic if you've misplaced it. I don't know. You know, on many levels, I don't think there's still a film that looks like the original Tron. I mean, artwork-wise.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a very simplistic story, you know. But so very unusual, and I think that's all I can say is I think it kind of in its way, when Tron defeated the MCP and opened up the for everybody, you know, internet for everybody. That's kind of what it was. The government, you know, we had NASA and all these things. The government, big industries had these things, but the common person really didn't have a home computer yet. I had no idea what that film was all about. I still really don't, but I'm just happy you all enjoy it. But you know, I mean, it just was something very, very different. I didn't get Luke Skywalker. I tried out for Luke Skywalker. I didn't get that, thank God, because I would never have another career. And so when I'm not saying anything out of school here. I mean, what's Mark done lately?
The Joker.
I was too tall. Anyway, no, I'm just saying that, and Tron was just so unusual, and I had no idea what that was, what it was. I was doing a Western at the time. I read the script and I'm going, just what in hell is this thing? I mean, I couldn't understand the language. But when Jeff Bridges was involved, certainly, you know, he was somebody I admired his work at that time as a peer. And so it just looked great. It looked kind of like Star Wars. I don't know, we were running around these great bikes and stuff. I saw all these drawings when they invited me over to Disney Studios. And I looked at it, and they were interested in doing it. And hey, it was a Disney feature. So I had to take it. And then when it didn't do too well, I went right back to television going, well, my film career is dead. So the wonderful surprise about it all is that Tron has now, 28, almost 30 years later, has resonated so much with modern audiences. And I think it finally caught up to it, you know. It was ahead of its time.
But you haven't left the genre world.
No.
You stayed in it. You've obviously got a passion for it, having written some sci-fi of your own.
Mm-hmm.
What is the appeal for you? What draws you to science fiction and fantasy?
Probably anybody here in this audience could answer that question. Why are we all here? Why are all those people out there? I've always enjoyed it since I was a child. It's a sense of imagination, adventure, you know, and I don't know, I've just always been attracted to sort of the larger-than-life characters that are in the genre. And what I love about science fiction now is that it's finally grown up. The guys, I mean, if you look in Hollywood, Steven Spielberg, people of that generation, the film school kids who grew up, who loved comic books when they were boys and girls, and this type of genre, started making films and you know, bringing it up along with us. I mean, the Hollywood establishment still has sort of a negative view, even though it makes tons and tons of money for them. I guess that's kind of changed now, but I can remember the time, like I said, trying to get somebody about a superhero. But it was absolutely absurd. Superman was the only thing that was acceptable, and then Batman came along, and then it started to happen. But in the science fiction thing, they still have kind of a negativity towards it. You know, Tron was nominated. The original Tron was, we were going to be nominated for an Oscar in the technical aspect of animation. Then they reneged on it, saying that we cheated. We used a computer. Nobody draws anymore. Computers do the animation, and they just didn't see it at that time. So they finally caught up. But I think it's just my attraction to it has been as you know, I embrace my inner geek, and I love science fiction and fantasy.
Well, we were talking about the industry view of it just a moment ago. Now we're seeing a lot of the biggest television shows are sci-fi and fantasy. The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, a lot of the shows on space.
But we're not in outer space anymore, and that upsets me.
Yeah, there aren't that many
Well, it's
shows
because
like
we on
that.
Earth are looking at the ground now. We're not looking at the horizon anymore.
Yeah.
We've lost interest in the States and space exploration. Only a small amount of people do that. Don't get me on my soapbox.
I'm missing
We are-
B5.
We're very, very... Sheridan had a speech that I did. I can't remember the exact wording of it anymore. But it was basically, we're looking at our shoes now, we're not looking up at the horizon. And that man has always explored. You know, we're using little robots to go to Mars. We should be going to Mars. And I know people in the astronaut corps that are very frustrated because they've been training now for years to do that exact mission. And they're not going to be able to do it because of a bunch of idiot politicians in Washington who decided that that's not a priority for mankind anymore. And it's very short-sighted, myopic, and what's not.
Is there something
And science fiction isn't being written that way. I mean, yeah, we've got The Walking Dead. If I have one more zombie show, I'm going to die. I'm sorry. Have we zombied ourselves out yet? Vampires? My God. You know what? Because there's a dearth of imagination, that's why. We need some more JMSs around. Straczynski. Some visionary ideas that then they're able to so eloquently put them down on paper or on, you know, out there. And you know, it's just that genre is dying. I don't understand it. And we need to go back to outer space. We need to have those imaginary worlds and beyond. Because believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I talked to astronauts, scientists at NASA, all during the 90s when we were doing that show. And shows like Star Trek, Babylon 5, we didn't know how much of an influence we were on the actual people that are doing these things, that are really up there. You know, there's somebody floating around this country, this world right now. We've forgotten there's a space station up there. Nobody thinks about it anymore. It's like commonplace. To Jules Verne or H.G. Wells, Edgar Rice Burroughs, this would be the, oh my God, this is what they wrote about. This is what they were dreaming about. And we're living it and we're bored to death. There's something seriously wrong. And anyway, that's my diatribe.
Do we need more entertainment that
Yes,
is set in space to inspire us to go out?
That's exactly it. And the guy was, we had some guests out to our little sound stage in North Hollywood. And he said, wow, this is so amazing, because he's walking down the space station hallways that are all made of plywood and paint. And I'm going, wow, this is amazing. I stood on pad 39 at the gantry of a STS-84 that was going to take off at 1 o'clock that very morning, and I witnessed it. And I was standing there leaning my head into what's called where the crew quarters was on the space shuttle. And I'm looking in there, and there's all these people in white suits and masks, and everything's antiseptic. And I said, hey, how are you? And they said, Captain Sheridan, welcome aboard. Wow. Cool. And then, I'm standing there, and we're hundreds of feet up, and that big orange bomb that's right next to me, And I said, so what's going on? He said, hey, are you and Delenn going to get back together? While he's like doing things with knobs and instruments. And I'm going, this is like so surreal. So, and then likewise they came out to visit us, and oftentimes when they had to make trips to JPL in Pasadena, we always invited them by, and they would come and they were like always amazed at this. And then the guy very simply said, you don't understand, Mr. Boxleitner, you help in creating the dreams, and we take those dreams and try to make them a reality. And I think we're lacking in that a lot. So this classic Trek, all the Star Trek shows, Babylon 5, shows like this, inspire these people. And they're scientists, they're bright minds, bright young minds. And man, if we don't get out there and help seed those minds, we're not going to get off this rock. We may have to leave it one day. It's going to be far too many of us. I'm ready to go. So anyway, that's all.
Well, any questions from the floor?
Yeah, let's talk to you all. How about that?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the private space ventures right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. And that's probably where we're going to have to go. But it's just really sad to watch NASA being just disenfranchised and just dismantled before our very eyes over stupid budgetary cuts and things, when it's our very future of mankind we're talking about. There's nothing as big. We're hitching rides, and for an American this is a tremendous humiliation. We're hitching rides on Russian Vostok rockets. They're still going to the space station the old school way, the way they tried to get to the moon and didn't make it. And we're having to pay, what, was it 20 million to get on? To go up to our own international space station? I mean, it's just because the shuttle program had outdone itself. They had done it. Okay, but we would generally have something that's put in its place, so there's not that huge gap of time that it's going to be. Privatizing space, yes, wonderful. Why not? It's open frontier. Let's all go. It's a big rush, if you can do it. Sir Richard Branson is certainly one of the leaders of that. I admire him a great deal. But it's just sad to watch, because that's where the best and the brightest minds were going at NASA. And that's from Canada, from everywhere. Everyone gathered there. This is the place that it had it. And they're very disheartened there, I can just say. I know people that have trained for years and never got a ride. Trained for what they were doing. That's not uncommon throughout every business in the world. But these are really incredible human beings that were willing to risk the most amazing, adventure there is. And no one gives a damn anymore. We're worried about zombies. I'm here to stamp out all zombies. If I stick around that hall, watch out. No, I'm not.
Any more from the floor? Another hand up.
John Newcomb Sheridan.
If you could write it, how do you think Alan would react to meeting Tron?
That may come up yet, so I'm not going to answer that question. That may be coming soon.
That's very
To a
exciting.
theater near you. Yeah, I don't know, and I will let creative minds figure that one out, but it's kind of heading that way. So that's all I'll say. And I get in trouble at Disney.
No one's recording this, but
Spoiler alert.
You can tell us. I don't see any camera.
Way above my pay grade to give any answers like that. I'm just a mere actor. But I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'd have to sit down and think about that for a while. You know, how did Flynn look at Clue? I mean, it would probably be very much a similar father-son type of thing, the situation. Only hope a better outcome. But yeah, I can't wait. You know, and I want to go on record here that I have no official word. All I know is that there's a script that has been in the works. There are constant meetings going on, and I was at the John Carter premiere in Hollywood 3 weeks ago, and I ran into the same our executive producers, all the same ones at Disney there, and I said, if we are to do another one, when do you think that would happen? Just positive. I mean, just, you know. And he said, well, probably 2013 to shoot, and for a 2014 release. And that's just about right. I mean, Joe Kosinski was 4 years in prep before he ever ran any bit of film on Tron Legacy. So it takes a long time to prep these things, and it can't be 28 years though. I mean, CGI is good, but boy, you know, I won't be able to handle that one. I'm 61 now. What will that be in 28 years? No, that's not going to happen. So, anyway. Does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
That does, thank you.
Because I just tend to ramble at this age.
I'm used to it.
Anyway, anybody else? Let's just talk about what's going on. Yeah? Yes.
I asked this question, or Robert Ricardo asked you, what's left on your bucket list of things to do in life?
Oh, God. Bucket list. I don't even got the bucket out yet. I haven't. I'm not ready to even do that list. I got too much living to do right now. I'll wait for that to happen when I'm about 88. 88. Something like that. And I'll think of a bucket list. No, I just, a lot of changes have been going on in my life as of late, and I'm kind of reinventing myself again. So, either you know what I'm talking about, or you don't. So, but, you know, life is new. Start over and go on. And it's very exciting. I mean, you know, some good stuff is coming along. Doing this new show, GCB. That's on. It just came on last Sunday night premiered. My episode started around the 25th, I believe. And it's more of it's a step away from the genre stuff, which is good. Because you have to change it up every once in a while, in life and in Hollywood, which is like dog years. 5 is like 50. And my age group, it's getting harder and harder because I was generally a television actor, and so many people that were prominent in films are no longer filling seats in the movie theaters anymore, and so their agents say it's time to do television. And so my group that were doing television throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s are getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Reality TV is destroying us as well.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to want to go away. So, you know, it's, I don't have the career choices I once had. So I've got to take what's out there. So when you see Transmorphers, I have some real duds out there. And some I enjoy, My favorite one was shot in British Columbia called Snakehead Terror. And it was on Sci-Fi Channel and actually did very, very well for it. And I did one called Area 51, which is, or 51, whatever they want to call it. And that was kind of fun. It was a good horror picture. But, you know, it's hard. I shot that while I was shooting Tron, in fact, Tron Legacy.
Huh.
I had like a 2-month layover.
Right.
I shot that little movie in the middle of that in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
They do really well. As somebody who works
They
for
do
space,
very well. I mean,
the ratings they pull in are quite impressive, given their budget and everything. It's,
Area 51 had they really did some old school monster making too. It wasn't all that cheesy CGI that a lot of them use. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. And also, you know, you gotta make a living, you know. Very simple. But bucket list, I don't know, my friend. I don't want to think about that yet. Okay? I'll let you know.
got a question Right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Who was your favorite person to work with and why?
You're gonna get me in a lot of trouble, you know. Well, I loved Katie Jackson back in the 80s when we were doing Scarecrow Mrs. Fame. Right now, I love working with Annie Potts, and GCB. I'm her main squeeze, as she calls me. Main squeeze. Sounds like a fruit drink. And she's a ball. It kind of reminds me a lot of Kate. So this is both Southern ladies, both rather feisty. And James Arness, who was my mentor, who really, his decision to cast, to allow them to cast me in How the West Was Won changed my life. It gave me a career. I wouldn't be standing before you, and today without that man. And I buried him last year. Last year, it was quite a rough year, 2011 for me. He was like a father to me. He was sort of my father in show business. He was one of the great Western stars in television, and I did a series with him called How the West Was Won back in the 70s. And so he was very much that, and I was one of the few people in the industry that was at Paul Bearer at his funeral this last March. And what else? Who else? Oh God, so many. I had the privilege of working with so many great people. It's very hard to say who the favorite was. But even the ones that aren't so like big famous ones. I mean, working with Andreas Katsoulis, with Peter Jurasik on Babylon 5, with Mira Furlan, all of that cast. We still all get together. We've lost 4 of our party, and which I think is very, very scary and unusual because, I mean, my God, the original Trek people have just died off. I mean, think about it, DeForest Kelly and Scotty, Tommy Doohan. So, it's kind of, we've lost 4 of those people and they died way too young. And so it's kind of, that's actually kind of drawn us together. We have dinners over at, Mira always puts them on at her house, up in the Hollywood Hills there. And so we're kind of like coming back together again. Who else? I've worked with Kirk Douglas. So many people. So many people. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. How did you enjoy your experience working on Heroes?
On Heroes? Strange story with Heroes. I never was real. I was on it, but I never felt that I was on it. They never paid me a minute of attention. They auditioned me twice. I auditioned for that. And I was a governor, and then I became a senator. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really on the damn thing because the first season I thought Heroes was the most innovative thing. I thought it was great. I had only seen a couple episodes of it, and then when I knew I got the job, I rushed out, got the first season, and I went through that thing in one weekend. And I thought, this is the most unusual show. And then by the second season, it changed totally and lost it.
Writer's strike.
The writer's strike destroyed, its momentum. And then somehow Tim Krieg and these guys, they went off on something else had lost it to me. And so I wasn't really on that thing. I wasn't there long enough, to really get a feel for it. I worked with Allie Larder. She was wonderful. And that was it. My character never had an end to it. Kind of had a beginning. And it was kind of indicative of that show. Sir, out there.
At the end of Babylon 5's 4th season, you got to play Jared at different stages of his life and rapid success from sleeping life to what was that experience?
That was bizarre, wasn't it? Yeah, because then we got picked up by TNT after we thought we were canceled. Well, we were. I mean, we were canceled every year, by the way. Babylon 5 never had a chance from the get-go.
Wow.
It was a struggle the whole way. No one wanted it. There wasn't enough of you fans to keep them interested in keeping it on. Merchandising was too little, too late. All those things, and yet it was a terrific series. It's the best material I ever got to do. I will always say that. And I got to go the gamut from A to Z. But doing Sleeping in the Light, which was so sad, everybody sobbing all over the place. It was just like it was a 7-day sob fest. And we were so sad because we were falling short. Jay Nesson put this thing out. He locked us all into this 5-year saga thing. And now to feel like you weren't going to make it to the finish line, we weren't. And we finished Sleeping in the Light, and everybody sob. We had a party. It wasn't much of a party. It was a post-mortem. Turned into an Irish wake. That's right, Jerry Doyle. He led the way. I followed. Anyway, and that was it. I mean, and then suddenly we get news that TNT wants to pick up the 5th season, and then we're going to do 4 movies. So we were absolutely overjoyed. And that was in '97, I believe it was. And it was great. But then I had to go back, and the first movie was going to be when I was a young shaved-tailed lieutenant commander. And so I buzzed all my hair off and dyed it, and we tried to make like I was much younger, and I think we worked pretty successfully. I wish we had known, though, that we had all met each other before, when apparently I had met Doc Franklin, went on a mission with him. But if I'd have known that when I first started in ~94, that we actually knew each other, it was a stretch for us, I want to tell you. That I'd actually met Mira, that that I'd been captured by the Minbari and all that sort of thing. But anyway, we just plowed ahead. It was great. We did some terrific movies, I think. Then they handed me my gold watch, told me I was retired, and sent me on my way home, and proceeded to do a very weak, terrible spin-off called, what the hell was the thing called? It was so forgettable I've forgotten the title. Crusade, starring Gary Cole, who never wanted to be there in the first place. So, and I'm glad it went off. Yeah, everybody in the cast thought I was glad it went off because, you know, we were just disposed of so fast. And we said, and it was a big mistake. I think they should have continued on with the show. That's just I argue this with JMS to this day when we're at dinner. It's always a friendly argument. I love you, man. But we love to debate each other. And I still say, I said, you know, you painted yourself into a corner with this, putting this out there. It was going to be a 5-year saga. And then around the 5th season, this show started to get really mainstream recognition from the critics and the television networks. And there was no reason on earth, in my mind, that we shouldn't have gone on. He had wonderful writers that had written for the show when I came on. Neil Gaiman, Peter David, D.C. Fontana. We had he knew all the writers. JMS had a wide circle of people that could have contributed, and he could have sat back and overseen the whole thing, just as Gene Roddenberry had done it. And no, you don't want to do that. He told, well, there was a lot of stories I've been asked by people like you for years now. Why didn't you, there was the telepath war. Why we didn't get to see that? Well, there were a lot of stories that we had to do, and we just told about it in a narration afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, I believe Andreas, with a marvelous voice of his, told at the very end sort of a epilogue about the things that went on afterwards. We could have told those stories.
Yeah.
We could have been on for 6, 7, 8 seasons, I think, and probably have gotten. Well, we won 2 Hugo Awards. I think that even beats Star Trek. And Hugo is the biggest award in the science fiction world for literature, film, whatever. So I was very proud of that show. Very, very proud of it. But you know what, if it was meant to be, I'm asked oftentimes, are we going to have a reunion? I would say probably not, and Joe will go, what the hell is he out there saying that for? But you know, I'm trying to say, I appreciate that, but sometimes you just can't recapture that lightning in the bottle again. It was the time and it was the place, and it was the people. We don't have a lot of those people left anymore. And I don't know that you can recapture it. And then if it comes out and it's bad, then I'll get mad at us. No? Okay. Yeah, I would get mad. So, anybody else?
One front row right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Just wondering what you were saying there, there's a lot of stories, and there were. What ones would you have liked to see flesh out in particular?
I don't know. Probably that one with the telepath, because that to me was one of the most interesting aspects of the story, period. You know, I loved working with Walter. Anytime that Sheridan and Bester had any kind of scenes together, I loved that. And by the way, the wonderful Walter Koenig is getting a star on Hollywood Boulevard, and we're having a big party for him. in September, I believe it is. He's finally getting it for certainly his work as Chekhov in the iconic Star Trek and Babylon 5, everything that he's done. But so it's good. There's another reason we're going to all get together and celebrate one of our own. But I think that was probably the one I liked the most. My favorite season of all of them was the Shadow War sequence, the lead up to it. Of course, I wanted to have a much more explosive end to it all. I just like pyrotechnics. Instead of telling them to get the hell out of my galaxy, I'd like to show them the door. My boot. Anyway, but I think that was probably my favorite part. That was the aspect, and you know, there was all intense, for all intents, but when we got canceled our 4th season, he had to try to drop some things and cobble together. Then we got picked up again. He couldn't just pick up, because the last episode, Sleeping in the Light, we saved for an entire season and put it on the end of the 5th season, the last season. And then my last thing with them was the Call to Arms, in which I turned over the keys to the Excalibur there to the next crew. And it was like my grandpa's old car that I drove. Anyway, so anybody else?
I got one.
Well, go for it, of course.
What made you to become an actor?
I just was lousy at everything else. I don't know. I started when I was a kid in high school, and I just fell in love with it. But I was raised in a place that I had no idea how to go about it. So I left home and went to Chicago, and I started in school there, drama school. I didn't go to college. I thought I was going to be drafted and off to Vietnam, but I figured I better give it a try. They didn't draft me, and I stayed in drama school. And then I proceeded to do some local theater, and I started in the theater. I love that very much. And then I ended up in New York. And then from New York, I was on Broadway briefly. And then from there to the West Coast, I decided, in fact, Marion Doherty casting agency, I was up for, I went up for all these movies in New York. And they kept looking at me going, you know, this is the wrong place for you. You need to be in the West Coast. And I can tell you, it's very strange because I'm thinking Jeff Bridges, I'm thinking guys that were my age, you know, and generation. And so watching those guys, always going to the movies going, you know what? I was young, I was in my early 20s, I had no responsibilities but unto myself. And I decided to go west, young man, and seek my fame and fortune. And you know, it's much warmer out there if you got to sleep on a park bench. So, anyway, better than New York, okay? I love New York, but I decided to do that. And I thought it was my destiny to go out to Hollywood. And I always wanted to do it since I was a little boy. So I just did it, you know? So, you want to start?
Since you have written science fiction for yourself, you're obviously very vested in it, passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people at these conventions are people who have ideas of their own, be they for comic books, be they for movies, television series.
Mm-hmm.
What key ingredients, or what should people focus on most when crafting their own worlds, their own stories? What is important to you? Or what advice would you impart?
Well, that's a difficult question because so much depends on luck. It really does. There's some greatly talented people out there that will never, ever get a chance to show it and express it. You have to have tenacity. You have to want it more than anything in the world. You have to have the luck to be in the right place at the right time. I certainly had that. But I always took advantage of it right away. I didn't hesitate. And I played characters that didn't hesitate. John Sheridan never hesitated. When he went and made a decision, he went for it. Hell or high water. And that was kind of in me. I was always that way. I was a lot braver than I am now. I decided, I remember in New York, going up for musicals. I couldn't sing my way out of a bucket. But you know what? I got on stand in these cattle call lines and end up going on a stage under a bare light bulb and warble something and go, what are you doing here? We want singers, not comedians. But I just think for people here, I often get people send me fan fiction, they call it.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's god awful. You know, it's, God bless you, you know, but it's very difficult to, you know, to write, to be a writer anyway. It took me 2 years to do Frontier Earth. 2 years while I was also doing Babylon 5, but I had a captive audience, and that's what it was aimed for. I had the B5 audience. But it was a painful thing, and that's why I haven't done it since. You know, I either have a story that was just basically, that's maybe one story off the top of my head that they said, do you have a story? Because William Shatner's out there doing it, everybody's doing it, and we have an opportunity here to do it, and would you like to? And I thought, why not? And I gave it a whirl. And I had somebody to help me, because you know, you just don't sit down and write novels. Not Ernest Hemingway or Ray Bradbury or something like that, so I had to, I did, it's a help on how to structure characters and the plot lines and stuff. But I had the story in my head.
Right.
You know, it's getting it down and getting it properly done. But I would just say, don't listen to old duffers like me up on stage. If you have a story, do whatever you can do to get it down. Hone your story, make it as truthful. Find the truth to it. That's what's important. That's what people resonate. That's what we respond to. It has to have certain truths. And then try to get it to somebody. You know, it's very, very difficult to do. But with the new technologies, perhaps you can get it to somebody very quickly and do it. I mean, but submitting it to some old fool like me or John Delancey especially. Good. He'll love that. Please go back and tell him I said it. John and I are dear old friends. That should end it. This wonderful guy tried to get me to smuggle money back from Germany, back to the States, like I was some drug mule. I won't go any further than that. Because Canadian authorities may be listening and watching. But, no. You know, it's just hard, your question. It really is, because there's no one way, there's no one path.
Right.
It's very difficult. And yet, you never know. I think the story was with Gene Roddenberry that, you know, he was a motorcycle officer, cop, CHP. And he was trailing behind some big producer and some big, back in the early 60s, or late 50s. And on his motorcycle, he had scripts in his saddlebags on the motorcycle, because he was, you know, part-time, he was a writer, an aspiring writer, but he was a motorcycle cop. And he followed it. There used to be this restaurant that was very famous on Sunset Strip called the Cock and Bull. And a lot of the producers would go there for lunches, and deals are always made in lunch, you know, these kind of things. And he had the audacity to follow this guy behind him he got his lights on, I think, and followed him right up into the parking lot of the Cock and Bull. And the guy got up, going, "Officer, what did I do?" He said, "Can we step inside, please?" And he sat down and he said, "I have an idea for this series," because the Western Wagon Train was very popular at that time, hugely popular hit. And he said, "I have a series that takes, it's Wagon Train in outer space." And thus became Star Trek. And the guy just was so taken by the audacity of this cop, you know. But that's the kind of stuff. That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not be all true. It might be partly myth now. I don't know. But that probably is close to the truth. You know, that you have to do some crazy thing like that, and it's done every day. Because everybody's got a script. Everybody's got a story. You know. The wonderful thing about the internet and everything now is that anybody sits down with a word processor, and you never know. You know, next great movie script can come out of that. So, anyway, anybody else? Oh boy, I got sleep already. Okay, let's let this.
Yeah, of course.
We're going to hold you for.
Yeah, I'll be here.
That'll be the last ditch. Yeah. Yes.
What sort of moments do you find most difficult or that come to you most easily as an actor?
It's funny. Most easy for me now is to tears. I think it's because after a while you've lived enough life, you felt enough pain in your own life, you can relate to it much more. When I was a macho young man who didn't cry. And I used to struggle with trying to do that, you know, as an actor, to try to relate to something. You know, I had enough of my life to do that. When I buried my dog, things like that. Now, you know, little things like that you use as imagery. That's part of the actor's process to relate to something in your own life, and then as a character you're expressing. And so, but I think those type of things, I'd rather play fun characters now, much more. I would like to do more comedy. I've never been given the chance to do that. And I played some very lighthearted characters in my career, but I never got to do as much. And I've always tried out for sitcoms and stuff. They don't want me. Nobody wants me to sitcom. My first job in Hollywood was on one of the greatest, I had 5 lines on one of the greatest sitcoms ever in television history, the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And I had just come out from New York. I didn't have any film on me, and they only wanted to see film. They didn't care about what you did anywhere else. What do you? And so I did that, and with some of the greatest comedic actors there were in television at the time. And you know, so I don't want to do a sitcom. Now I don't want them. How about that? They don't want me. I don't want them. But I like to find the humor in any character somehow, and. So that's probably the thing I want to do the most. Maybe I'm easier at it, but I can relate to those kind of emotions, such as sorrow and those kind of things, much more. And I just think that's because we get older as human beings. It's closer to the surface. You have too much bravado when you're young to follow that, you know. So, sir, back there.
You have one of the best voices I can imagine.
Thank
Have
you.
you ever thought about doing like one of those books on tape where it's just...
Oh, I've done many on tape, when we still had tape. I've done Elmore Leonard, I've done Larry McMurtry, I've done, oh God, there's several ancient history audiobooks I've done some of the L. Ron Hubbard's Pulp Fiction stories, science fiction ones. I haven't done anything as of recently, but I'm doing Tron and the Tron Uprising animated series that we're in the middle of right now that should be on in spring and summer on the Disney XD channel. God, I'm like a commercial, aren't I? I'm so used to spewing that stuff out. But with Elijah Wood and Lance Hendrickson and a great cast, Pee Wee Herman. Yeah? We'll let him, we risk him for any Hustler magazines carrying on. But it is Disney, you know. Can't have him come through the gate with that, so to speak. Anyway, a lot of dirty money. Yes, sir.
Going back to comedy, how was it working on Chuck?
Now that was fun. First of all, they wanted me on there because I'm in the poster in his bedroom. And Zach Livy tried like hell to get on Tron Legacy. And has not spoken to me since. What do you think? I could get him on the show in the movie? A real Tron fan. I mean, you know. And the little back corner of that poster, I signed it on the back corner. It's not visible, so don't try to, you know, try to zoom up the image or something, try to find it. It's on the back. So, because the prop guy had to do that when they were looking. I enjoyed it. I was only on a small bit. They had Morgan Fairchild back, I think for another episode. But we did what? I did the wedding and everything like that. It just, you know what? It was no work at all. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to be there and smile. I looked tan. I put man tan on me. Anyway, and it was fun. It was just a great set. And you know, the strange thing was, and I got nothing but blank looks. We shot that 2 sound stages away where I spent 4 years, wonderful years on Scarecrow and Mrs. King on the Warner Brothers lot. And you know, strangely, Chuck was kind of like a reverse modern update of Scarecrow and Mrs. King. Instead of the woman being the sort of ditzy novice that, you know, Chuck started out as this geek, And, what's that beautiful blonde, what's her name?
Von Strahovski as Sarah. If I'm not mistaken.
Sarah, well, yeah. And she's the one who looked at me with a blank stare going, what show? She's Australian, she wasn't even around then. Anyway, but I just kind of impressed by them. It's kind of like I did a series very similar to that back in the 80s. And then their eyes rolled up in their foreheads and they went to sleep. But they were a great bunch of people. And there's a show that struggled all the time. You fans of the people that kept it alive. It was always going to be taken off. And so half the time they were depressed over there because they felt nobody wanted them. But then somehow they get picked up. How many seasons did that go for?
5.
5. They finally made 5. And he's a great guy, Zach. And Adam Baldwin is an old buddy of mine, and he's not related to Alec. And he's proud of it. I know Alec too, and he's incredible, absolutely incredible. So, no, it was a good show. I was lucky to be on there, but it was not work at all. It was a wonderful little kind of romp, I didn't have to do anything, and I got paid.
We got time for one last question.
Really? I want to do this the rest of the day. I like it.
I'm going to bring you back to episodic TV. What role, what TV show would say, I'm going to do 13 or 6 or 12 or whatever they do?
It's so different than when I started. I mean, they pick them up for 6, they pick you up for 5, they pick you up, you don't even know what they're. And then you come on the air. I did this show, Chaos, last year. It was on Friday night, CBS, and it was kind of like, the character was like sort of a scarecrow type guy from the agency, CIA, trying to make a comeback into the agency again. And I got back from Vancouver, and a wonderful cast, and I'm thinking, this is a great show, and they said this is possible 4 or 5 episode arc. Well, I think they made 1 episode after mine, and they were canceled. So it was about 5 episodes, and they were gone. And luckily they showed it, but it came and went. What was your question again? You said
What is there a type of show that would bring you back? If you got a script.
Any show would bring me back. What type? What do you got? My God, man. I don't have those choices anymore. They don't come to me. I have to go audition for them again like I did when I was 20. And I'm back at it again. I've come full circle. They don't know who I am in Hollywood
Somebody said,
anymore.
we got 22 episodes.
Wouldn't I would, oh my God. I would love to be on the series. I just auditioned for a pilot about 3 weeks ago. I was on the short list for a week, and that means I was in consideration. I'd be in Hawaii right now, not with you people. I didn't get it. Somebody they made an offer to, but I sat around stewing for a week in the number 2 spot.
Were you doing
Huh?
Next question. Here's Boxleitner, everybody.